Perfect.
Hi, everyone. It's Annalee Kruger, the owner of Care Incorporated. We work with families all across the country developing customized aging plans. The folks who call us for services are usually the adult son and daughter who are burned out taking care of aging loved ones, trying to do the best they can with juggling life, career, families, their own health issues, plus the needs of their aging parents. But it's just not sustainable without having a plan, because at some point people will get burned out. We call it the caregiver snowball, where it starts out feeling like it's manageable, and then pretty soon you're taking days off of work, you're canceling vacations, your own health is impaired, and your relationships are getting pretty dicey and resentful towards each other. So we want to prevent that, because it is preventable if we can work with families sooner rather than later, to be able to sort out what are the options for care, what do they qualify for from a financial perspective, and what does that look like to age in place at home, feel like you're honoring your parents' wishes, but what's the plan if and when staying at home is no longer safe, feasible, or viable. And that's where we do what's called a care matrix. We also make sure that our families that work with us complete their grab and go binder, which is an organizational tool for all of your documents. Make sure your beneficiaries are up to date, your power of attorney documents are done, accounts, passwords, everything is buttoned up, so that when things change with your parents' health or with your health, nobody has to scramble at the 11th hour trying to find all these documents when you should be at the hospital or worried about your own health and not having to scramble trying to get all this in place. So we have an exciting guest today. Her name is Allison. She is an advisor doing special needs planning, which is such a huge need. The special needs population is growing leaps and bounds, and they are one of the most underserved, in my opinion, they are one of the most underserved populations out there. So Allison, with that, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and what you do, and kind of the common questions that people ask you about why special needs planning is so critical.
Absolutely. Annalee, it's such a pleasure to be here with you, and we're so happy to be in contact with CareRight and the services that you provide. They are so needed, and also another underserved community, and so certainly happy for that. As you said, Allison Scobberg here with Consolidated Planning Group. We are a holistic special needs financial planning firm. We're nationally certified as Social Security advisors and members of the Special Needs Planning Academy. There's a lot of confusion on what we do as special needs planners and what other advisors do. And I always try to explain from a perspective, there's about 250,000 financial advisors in the U.S. And of the 250,000, about 1/10%, about 125 total, are nuanced and special needs. And so the families that we serve are families that have a loved one with a disability that will have care needs possibly the rest of their life, not just the rest of the parent's life, the rest of the individual's life. Special planning really is important as it relates to this, because, a lot of people, if you did a Google search on the percentage of people that are ready for retirement, to spend 25 to 35 years in retirement. They've been stocking the pond all this time by saving money, and in retirement, we're going fishing, right? Well, you have 1 to 2 retirements. If you're in a married, relationship, there might be 2 retirements, and that's a big order to fill. But when we have a loved one with a disability that has care needs the rest of their life, it could be an additional 25 to 35 years beyond the parent's life. And quite honestly, we serve a lot of families that have more than one child in the family, or more than one loved one with a disability. So when we talk about those specialized, planning, I kind of think of it from a perspective of like a doctor. Annalee, if you had a heart problem, you're not going to a podiatrist. You're not going to go to the foot doctor to get your heart worked on. You're definitely not going to go to the PCP to get advice on the critical heart, right? We're going to go see a cardiologist. And when it comes to special needs planning, it's kind of the same thing. So you can go to an advisor. Most advisors are not nuanced in the money in the right buckets and planning for state and federally funded programs such as SSI and Medicaid, childhood disability benefits under a parent's record, and Medicare, and not to mention that there are Medicaid waivers in every state across the United States that are designed to waive off some of the cost of care associated with caring for an individual with a disability. So maintaining our eligibility for these programs is critical, and that's where we see some of the mistakes come in with these, with people that are not nuanced and special needs.
Yeah, and that's huge. That it's always a good analogy when you use the heart issue and you'd go to a specialist who specializes in that. We do elder planning, and that's especially nuanced as well. And I see a lot of mistakes that not only consumers or families make because they just don't know what they don't know, but a lot of advisors, this isn't just a general knowledge type of thing. It really is a specialty area. So anyone who's listening to this podcast or watching this podcast, if you or someone has a special needs loved one, you absolutely need to book a time with Allison or her team to just talk through and get maybe a second opinion on what maybe your existing or current financial planner may or may not be doing on your behalf. So it is a nuanced practice. I work with a lot of special needs that are older, right? Where Mom Ethel and Marvin, who are now in their 80s, kept Johnny with Down syndrome home with them his whole life. And now Mom is getting demented and Dad can't take care of Mom and little Johnny. So it's a really, it's a huge concern out there for millions of families that are going through this. What other kind of questions do you tend to get? What are maybe a couple mistakes that most people make that you see?
Well, one thing that I would probably clarify too is there's a lot of confusion in the special needs community on what a special needs planning advisor does and what an estate planning attorney or a special needs attorney does. And I always summarize that very quickly by saying they're the paper, they're the legal documents, the special needs trust, the will, the healthcare power of attorney, guardianship. These are all things that we hear about in the special needs community. They're the paper, and we're the money. How much money do you need to fund the special needs trust? Where do we have the money in the right buckets to preserve the eligibility for any state and federally funded programs? Those future care cost estimates and planning, and like you said, it's important to plan now, plan when you're still of sound mind and sound body. And yes, Mom and Dad have good intentions to take care of little Johnny as long as they can, but the day comes when they can't anymore. And so planning ahead for that day, of knowing that day is coming, is super, super important. So I would say one mistake is assuming that you'll always be able to care for your special needs child. You might not be able to because you might be having to care for your aging parents yourself. You may be caring for a spouse that is not well. You yourself may not be well enough to care for anybody, or including yourself. So I think planning in advance for that is a big thing. And I would say that the other thing is big mistakes that people make is really not having money in the right buckets, and they're losing the Medicaid eligibility. And so one might say, well, who even cares about Medicaid? We have private insurance. That is not how we roll. And I would say that that's exactly the families that we serve. They don't care that much about Medicaid. But Medicaid eligibility is required for every one of the Medicaid waivers out there. Some of these Medicaid waivers budgets for the year are up to $340,000 a year, depending on the level of need of the individual. They're designed to keep the person in home and community-based services and out of an institution. They pay for things like attendant care services, basically staff. They might pay for respite care. They might pay for various therapies that otherwise maybe weren't covered by insurance. So that's why we care about Medicaid. It's not because everybody thinks Medicaid is the best thing since sliced bread. And it might be for some people that have, a high level of need, an individual with a high level of need. It's the only way that they can get the care that they need. But it's the Medicaid waivers and why we need to preserve that eligibility for Medicaid. And right now, those Medicaid eligibility requirements, as silly as it is, it's still $2,000 assets in their name. They can have one house, one car, and up to $2,000 assets in their name if it's one individual with a disability. And that number really hasn't changed in 40 or 50 years. We're hopeful that it is going to be increased. There was some talk in legislation that they were talking about raising it to $10,000. It didn't pass, but maybe one day it will. But right now, those are the Medicaid eligibilities. So we help people have the money in the right buckets. We're able to set up and educate people on ABLE accounts. That is a special account that you can have for an individual with a disability, and really put that plan in place so a family can have a comfortable retirement and some semblance of retirement of what they were hoping for, and also still have enough money to fund the special needs trust. Because the thing is, when you have a loved one that has care needs the rest of their life, it's like a marathon. Mm-hmm. It's not a sprint. And there's got to be a lot of self-care that goes in to the caregivers and to the parents. They do need to have some semblance of comfortable retirement and enjoyment and some travel and some respite. Because if you don't, then your caregiving ability is going to be diminished, and the time that you have to be a caregiver to your loved one it's going to be less. So I think that is a critical piece. We always think about our kids, our loved one with a disability, and we put ourselves on the back burner. And when we do, as you know, Annalee, that's when things start falling apart for mom and dad.
Yep. Yeah. The families that I work with as well for aging planning, some of the sons and daughters have special needs kids. And so then when they get that call that dad had a stroke and he's the primary caregiver to mom with dementia, the kids are they're already, burned out because they've already been full-time caregivers since the birth of their child in many ways. And so they're like, we just don't have any grit left in us because we're already burned out. And, it just makes for a very complicated situation to be even more complicated. So anyone listening to this podcast, if you have aging parents, we need to talk, because you need to have an aging plan, a proactive aging plan, if you want your loved ones to have the best quality of care possible and the best quality outcomes for your family relationships. One would hope the aging process brings families together, but I'm here to tell you that it is often not the case. And the aging process, just like the special needs journey, can be very bumpy. So lots of hospital stays, health issues, it takes a lot of energy to make it through these journeys, whether it's aging parents and or special needs. So I like to bring on really, really cool guests on the Caregiver Crisis podcast, and Allison obviously fits that bill. So again, anyone listening to this, if you've got special needs or you have aging parents, we need to absolutely talk. Allison, do you offer, how do people reach you, and kind of what's your process? Do you do a complimentary Zoom consult, and you can work across the country as well?
Yes, we can work across the country. We are domiciled in Texas, but we can work across the country. We do a free complimentary initial consultation, learn a little bit more about the planning that you've done so far. If you have an advisor, that's okay. Almost everybody that comes to us has an advisor. We're not here to rain on any great planning that you've done so far. We're here to understand the planning that you've done so far, where you are in the process and where you need help, and have plans for that. So, and you can reach out to us at contact@cpgcares.net, and we will have our contact information out for everyone as well. Annalee, I just wanted to share a recent experience, kind of the own trail that I'm on with a family friend that we are the healthcare power of attorney for. What I would say is your planning is so critically important. These in and out hospital stays that you were talking about, when you have a loved one that can't go home, it's not safe for them to go home. They need 24-hour care. You know, there are caseworkers at the hospital, there's no doubt, and they put these referrals out, these feelers out for these skilled care facilities, also called SNF. And what comes back is not always ideal. So when you're working with somebody like Annalee and Care Right and having a plan in place, we know where we want to go in the event that we are being discharged from the hospital and we can't go home. There may be bed reservations. There may be other things going on that you can do that you can plan this. We literally had a recommendation that we would discharge to an F-rated skilled nursing facility. Okay, well, no thanks.
Right.
And so, we're, having to back up and punt on those types of things. So I'm just saying, deal with it now before that crisis comes. Have a plan so that way people are just pressing go on your plan and your wishes. It's just so critically important. And I love that you're doing what you do, Annalee. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank
It's
you.
my pleasure to be here with you today.
And thank you for what you do. I just, like I said, a second opinion or adding Allison and her team to your financial team or your professional team is huge. You don't want to get down the road in your journey and find out the professionals that you are working with don't know what they're doing, because you can't undo it, right? Sometimes the damage is already done, and now what are you supposed to do? So it's always worth just some of your time to go ahead and, talk to Allison and her team and see if you're on the right path or your advisor's on the right path. No solid, quality, ethical professional should feel intimidated by having a specialist review what they're doing or be added to the team. It's in your best interest, so you have to advocate for yourself. If you're in the shoes of having aging parents and or a special needs loved one. So you have to be a bold advocate, and that includes with the finances as well. You want to make sure that you're on the right path. So excellent.
For sure.
Very good. Any closing comment, or are you good?
I am great. It's certainly my pleasure to be here with you today, and all of you listening. We certainly can help you. We really do call it a look under the hood. That second opinion, I think it's important. And quite honestly, those second opinions and their look under the hood was the difference. We've seen the difference of hundreds of thousands of dollars to millions of dollars over a 25 to 30 year period. And that is a big deal when it comes to funding a special needs trust. So I say that those look under the hoods really, really do matter.
They absolutely do. And it is it's a specialty area. So you don't want to leave things to chance. And this is one of them. So excellent. Thank you, Allison, for your time today and your expertise. We'll send out this podcast link when it's ready to go. And everyone, be safe out there, be happy, and give each other grace.
Sounds great. Thank you.